I am here to introduce. I'm Sam Lohman. I am one of the faculty at the library, and want to welcome you to the fourth and almost final event of the banned book series this year. There is an event right after this that I'll tell you about. The series has been going on all year, and it was co-developed and co-sponsored by the Education Department and the library. We have a display that's been up all year in the library. If you haven't seen it, go check it out. And we've had a series of talks. So this is the last one, and it's exciting because we get to see all these children's books. They're pretty fun to look at. And I wanted to share that at 4 o'clock, right after this event, there is going to be a Beyond Banned Books event organized by some student clubs, by the Cougar Pride Club and the Book Club. That's happening in Furstenberg, VFSC 136, which is the conference room by the entrance to OSI. And in that event, folks will be talking about these same issues with book banning in schools and libraries. And also there will be a chance to paint a tote bag. That's the activity. So you can paint a tote bag and talk about Beyond Banned Books after this in FSC 136. And with that, I will introduce Dr. Deanna Day-With, who is Associate Professor in the College of Education and will be leading the discussion this afternoon. Her research is focused on children's literature, and she will focus on the rights of children and teens as readers, how we can preserve those rights, and how selecting rather than banning books supports intellectual freedom. Next.
Sure. Well, thanks, everybody. Hey, it's awesome to have you here. So this is kind of what we're going to do. I decided, Shameen told me I should do hands-on, and so that's what I decided to do. And I really did want to do book club because I do a lot of research on literature circles and book clubs. So I thought, you know what, that's what we'll do today. We'll also look at the 4 top reasons why children's books are challenged or banned. And so there are 4 tables with a little poster and some markers. So I'm hoping that we'll go to all 4 of those tables so that we'll have representation and we'll do some brainstorming. And then I sorted books by those 4 top ones. Religious viewpoints, sexual content, and then what is that one? Oh, unsuitable for the age group. And then over here, we have offensive language. So those are the top 4 reasons why books are challenged in the US. And then we're going to talk about action steps. Like, what can we do as citizens? I do talk a lot about what teachers and librarians can do because that's what I teach and what I focus on. And then we'll do our book club. I also have book bingo if we have time, but I don't know if we will, but it's really fun to play and because we have to guess why that book has been challenged or banned. So if we can, we'll go play it over there at 4 o'clock. I'm going. So might as well, I'll bring it and that'd be fun for us to play as we're painting bags. So let's start off with, I want you to talk to a friend. And since we're equal, so this is perfect. I want you to just 2 minutes talk about what do you gain from a book? When you read a book, what do you gain? So let's just talk about that real fast. All right, 2 minutes. So should go like that. Full crew, told you 2 minutes. So Margaret Mooney, she's either Kiwi or Aussie. I can't remember. I should know, but she does a lot of research on the power of children's books. And as I was listening, you all were saying exactly what she says on her research. But books encourage us to think. We explore our own lives, but then we explore cultures and communities and the world and our place in the world too. We build connections, humanity, everyone is a human. Foster empathy, I heard that, opens our minds and inspires us. I heard someone say that, helps us think critically, challenges our views, definitely. Transports us to a new world, dragons. And this supports our understanding of ourselves. It's like we find ourselves in a book, just like what Regine Sims Bishop says, mirror windows and sliding glass doors. And so what really book challenges and book banning, who suffers the most are our children and our teens. I mean, they suffer the most, way more than adults. Because then they don't get to experience the true value and importance of books, everything that is discussed right on that slide. When a book is challenged, it's maybe removed from the shelf or it's in a special shelf in a library or a classroom. So that's how many in 2022 last year. It was just like phenomenal. I mean, crazy how many books have been banned, because I have the statistics. In 2015, there were 275 challenges. 2017, 377 challenges. 2018, 483. 2020, there were only 273 challenges. Last year, 1,269. See how it's just gone up every year. But last year has definitely the most ever in the United States. So I'm going to date myself. I grew up reading Judy Blume, and I remember reading Forever. It's on this table for sexual content. And my mom didn't care that I was reading it, thank goodness. And it was also available at my middle school library too. And that's where I did get it to read. But Judy Blume's books have been famous for being challenged and banned. And actually, she's written books, she's written multiple articles, and this is just one of her quotes from her articles. Could I have a volunteer to read it for me? Someone else's voice.
What I worry about most is the loss of young people. If no one speaks out for them, if they don't speak out for themselves, all they get for required reading will be the most bland books available. And instead of finding the information they need at the library, instead of finding the novels that illuminate life, they will find only those materials to which nobody could possibly object.
And actually, this is the current. I mean, she's been writing about challenging and banning of books for 30 years, because her books have been challenged for that since the 60s. It's just kind of mind-blowing for Judy. And then Jason Reynolds, who writes a lot of books about race, and I'm trying to think, he took Kennedy's book and he wrote it for young adults, Stamped. And this book has been challenged a lot because of critical race theory. And so he also has been writing about what it feels like to have his books challenged. So another voice. Someone else want to volunteer and read his voice?
There's no better place for a young person to engage and wrestle with ideas that may or may not be their own than a book. Stories are meant to be playgrounds for ideas, playgrounds for debate and discourse. Books don't brainwash, they represent ideas.
I wanted to share the author's perspective with all of you also. And so I was looking at the research of what happens to kids if we, these are the possible results that could happen to kids. Go Forth says that kids, when they do not, when we challenge and we ban books from our classrooms and our libraries, kids start to realize there's good ideas and there's bad ideas. And he also talks about then students think, okay, this is acceptable or this is unacceptable. And that's heartbreaking to me as an educator. I also found that then there's going to be knowledge gaps, especially historical knowledge gaps with kids. I couldn't find research on that, so I need to do more on it. But I also believe kids will be closed-minded. They will not have open minds about what the world is about and negative stereotypes about peoples and the human race. And then Jones, I thought she did, this is really cool. I did not know about this research, so I started planning for this. She says that when students' lived experiences are erased from books that they read, it's going to cause racial trauma. And it's true. I mean, I can see that happening. I have a daughter that is biracial, and she has to read books that show who she is in those books. So I know you all are probably very familiar with the First Amendment. And that allows individuals to speak, publish, read, and view what they wish. And today I'm only talking about children's books because of course that's my specialty. And I do also talk about YA books a little. But the First Amendment also protects all information, such as not just books, but magazines, the newspaper, films, art. What else did I miss? Curriculum. And so it's not just children's books, even though that's what I'm focusing. And one thing that I do like to teach and talk about in my classes when I teach children's literature is that because we have so many immigrants and we have refugees and asylum seekers here in America, they maybe are not familiar with the First Amendment, but the United Nations also has articles that talk about that are very similar to the First Amendment. And after World War II, the United Nations came up with these 2 articles. So everyone has the right to freedom of opinion and expression. And this right includes freedom to hold opinions without interference and to seek, receive, and impart information and ideas through any media. And if you weren't aware, the National Council of Teachers of English, that's the organization for teachers that teach reading or writing or literacy. And then the American Library Association, ALA, they also have, they've taken the First Amendment and they've made the students' right to read. Since that's my focus, because I really believe children have a right to read whatever they want. And we need to give it, that's our duty as teachers, librarians, community members, parents to give them that right. And so I just did a screenshot of what that looks like, the students' right to read. And I think this is really important as teachers, librarians, schools, we need to be teaching kids. They have that right and they should stand up for it. And we've got to make sure that we help them stand up for that right too. And then I'm not sure if you all are aware, this just happened in October. The House of Representatives and the Senate did a reaffirming of the right to read 2022. And a representative from Tucson, Arizona, where I'm from, was part of that bill, and then someone I believe from Delaware. And so this legislation is talking about kids get to choose what they want to read, and it's like reaffirming they have that freedom. And so we need to remind our community, we need to remind our school boards, we need to remind everybody too. The other cool thing, because I know there's a couple of you who are librarians in here also, part of this legislation was to increase the number of certified school librarians. It's like, cool. I don't know how that money is all being dispersed or whatever. You'll have to read the act. I was looking at it today because I was really excited. What? Sure.
Well, it kind of goes to that certified librarians, so I know that Leave It's Evergreen is now getting rid of the librarians within their districts. So that's kind of contrary to what that is.
We should be at their school board and we should be contacting them and letting them know that that's, yeah. And I think they're getting rid of them at the high school and middle school. Is that where they're getting them?
I think it's all of them.
I thought they were getting rid of the ones at the elementary, but it's wrong.
It's just. It was within our newsletters, so I know personally that I probably wouldn't have been interested even in a library because of my past with reading. That I wouldn't have ever discovered a library or books, and I learned a lot from the librarians that were there in elementary, middle, and high school. So it just befuddles me how all of a sudden libraries and librarians are a target within this entire system.
We're all the radicals.
This,
No, we're not, we're neutrals.
You're my radical librarian friend.
they're cutting so many different things and it's just heartbreaking, but we need to be talking to them and I'll, actually have a slide left later on, but you know what? We all need to write an op-ed for September for the Columbian. Anyone want to write it with me? Needs to come out every, we have to be doing it every year, but also we should be writing something to the school districts too.
I saw your comment.
Let's write more. Okay, so what I do is I have 4 tables of, actually, I skipped over a slide. Here are the 10 big reasons why books are challenged. Sexual content, offensive language, unsuited for that age group. I do not know what that means.
No one does.
And then religious viewpoint. So I decided just that we would talk about the first 4 because I thought, I don't get well, maybe I kind of maybe too, but I thought let's brainstorm what that label means. And then what are the implications or the difficulties of that label? Because I really learned a lot when I read Forever. I was telling you about that earlier. It does have sexual content, but it was an amazing book and I did need to read it as a 7th grader. So what are the implications of this label? And then what could your standpoint or your counter argument be to the groups or the parents or community who are wanting to challenge a book that has sexual content or religious viewpoint? So who has a statement or a rebuttal or a counter argument for sexual content?
Yeah, so
Go for it.
that's ours. So, I feel like one of the easiest ways to challenge these book bannings for sexual content is that this is a way more controlled way to introduce important topics to children in a way that's
Yes.
if they don't get it from a book, the child might go to the internet, and I don't know if you've been on the internet ever, but it's a terrible place. And that's I would much rather, have a discussion about Forever and Judy Blue and the sexual content of that than anything on the internet, so.
I agree. I want them to learn about it in a book.
Yeah.
Why not?
Well, and there's a lot of parents that won't even discuss it with their children.
Yes. Well, my mom had it, so I learned. I loved to read. Yes.
And a lot of these, that's really what it comes down to, is they're not wanting to face this conversation.
Here.
And by parents not being open and honest with their children are going to find out some way. And they may not get the appropriate effect, or they're going to go out and experiment for themselves. And then that leads to consequences that parents don't want their children in.
And when kids talk to kids, they're not learning usually correct information. Yeah. That's what yes. All right, offensive language.
Yeah. I have offensive language. So for offensive language, children are going to learn it at home, TV, friends, playground, street. They're going to use it within crowds, peer pressure, because of peer pressure, and it's an impossible thing to stop. So when my kids were young and they started swearing, I would tell them that that you're showing your lack of intelligence, and there are better words out there to express yourself. I said it basically I told them that you're showing your lack of intelligence. And by parents not explaining these words or just having these discussions with their children, we're depriving them of knowledge of what they are and understanding what the words mean and where they come from, and within society, and we're leaving them to learn someplace else. See, I'm trying to, and if we would explain to our kids and help them, then they would be able to grow and expand their vocabulary and be able to express themselves better instead of just using a word that may not be appropriate to us. And that comes down to, we're censoring our children instead of helping them to understand what language is and how to appropriately how to help them learn language to really tell us how they feel.
Thank you. We also talked about that we use different discourse in different groups. I mean, we've all done that, and that's just, it's part of life. I mean, I talk differently with lots of different people, and that's when my language changes too. So unsuited to age group, what did you all decide?
Yeah, so we felt like this didn't have a clear meaning that people could agree on, and it's very subjective. And it implied that developmental stages needed to be kind of like enforced by an outside power rather than like developing naturally, and that it could have a chilling effect on teachers and librarians and probably kids too, by suggesting that certain books were off limits or inappropriate. And our counter argument is that the language is very vague, and it seems to confuse reading level with subject matter, without specifying what it's talking about. And that it's based on a faulty premise because kids are at a lot of different developmental stages in any given group, and it's going to be seeking different material and trying to find things that are challenging for them, and following their own interests. And you can't meet their needs with a uniform concept of what their development is supposed to be.
I also read, this goes with this, that I found an article that says that this is a way, unsuited for the age group, an easy way to censor books about minorities without stating that that's the goal, and that's what people are finding or saying. And so that's really scary. They're saying unsuited to the age group just because they don't want to say, oh, it's because of the race.
Well, one of the other things I learned long ago is that adults don't realize how smart and how I can't remember the word. Basically, it comes down to how smart children are and how much they do understand concepts. And so we do them a disservice as adults by trying to tell them that that doesn't meet their age group, because we think they're not as intelligent as they are.
They should be choosing it, not us. Okay, religious viewpoints. You got 30 seconds.
I think we had kind of briefly talked about how just because you're religious does not mean everyone else is, and therefore Just because you would not choose to give your children access to something because it doesn't agree with your viewpoint, does not mean you should apply that logic to everyone else who may or may not be religious. And also, I think within the religious viewpoint, it's also a way to censor really queer and trans voices, specifically minorities, other minoritized groups.
Correct.
And other religions.
Yes, than other religions. A lot of those books that I have there are either, yeah, they're atheist or so, yeah. Thank you, everybody. All right. So, I wanted just to talk about that censorship's been around. This is really the beginning of time. And that Shi Hung was the first person in 213 BCE that started burning books. So that's the first instance that we know about burning books. And then in Greece, Plato used to say that any literature written by Homer should be scrutinized. And then the colonists, when they came to America, they came here for greater freedom of speech, yet they immediately began controlling the printing press and determining what was going to be printed. So even though they were coming here for freedom, they decided to start. What's really horrible is in the last 2 years, teachers and librarians are losing their jobs because of censorship. So for example, this is right here, Matt Hahn, and he was a social studies teacher in Tennessee, and he lost his job because he showed a poem or a poet who talked about white privilege, and so he was fired for that. And then this is a principal, Toby Price. He read aloud, "I need a new butt." And I can't remember where he lives, somewhere in the South. And 2 days later, he lost his job as an administrator.
I want to know what I need a new butt is about.
Well, you're gonna have to read it. So, I feel like these were kind of like minor, but this is it's horrifying. And I just heard about in Idaho, our home state right next to us, there are librarians who are being attacked because of LGBTQ books, because they think that they're grooming children. And so I don't think any of them have lost their jobs yet, but that's worrisome too. So I am an advocate for selection versus censorship. It's just not going to stay, and that's okay. And since this presentation, I'm trying to present all about children's rights and readers' rights. This is what I always teach my college students who are going to be future teachers or my graduate students, is that let's be selectors versus banners or censors. Because a selector has faith in the intelligence of the reader. Censors are seeking to protect not the right, but the reader himself from the effects of his reading. And so I believe in choosing selection. That's, kids have the right to choose certain books and reject others. But also as teachers, we can choose certain books that we're going to use with kids based on the literary quality and the knowledge of child development and child psychology. And so selection doesn't insist upon removing that rejected book from the shelves for everyone else. It's according to, we know our students really well, every child in our class well, and we can help select the best books for our students. Another slide I have is the selector's goal is to provide high quality, honest works of literature for all kiddos, all children. And it's also, the selector is respecting children's intellectual freedom. Their right to read and believe that we have to provide honest books for all children also. So you might be thinking, okay, what are our action steps? What are we gonna do? Because it's so rampant right now in our society. And so I've got a bunch of ideas. And I don't think they're anything brand new either, but I tried to come up with stuff. Number one, I thought this was interesting, is that every teacher, every school, every librarian, no matter what, every year we have to celebrate Banned Book Week. All grade levels. So every school year, Sam, we need to have another, I think, banned, I mean, even if it's just for that month of September and October, we've got to have those selection of books and showing that, you know, it's happening, because students need to be aware of it all the time. And I mean, ALA, NCTE, they're so awesome about making sure that we celebrate that, but that's just really important. And during that time that we're teaching about the First Amendment, and then we're also teaching about students' right to read. The other thing is that during that Banned Book Week, we've got to be having open dialogue with our students, having discussions about the book challenges, incorporating critical thinking, investigating all the books that have been challenged and banned, and talking about those books, doing banned book clubs, essentially. Another thing Winkler talks about is doing picture book mock trials, and I thought this was really cool. I used to do these when I taught middle school. And so this is a little bit older, but from 2005, but I still think it's applicable today, is having kids read picture books, such as I Am Janice, or In Our Mother's House, or Something Happened in Our Town. And then they discuss that book together in a small group, and then they take the role. Okay, you can be the child, you can be the principal, and someone else is a community member. And then we have a mock trial, and the rest of the audience is the school board. And they have to come up with, okay, 12 reasons why this book should be either restricted, banned, or retained in the school library or in the classroom. And so this just helps them also prepare to have a voice too. So that's another interesting thing I found when I was doing research for this. The other suggestion Winkler says is that we persuasive letter writing, that's part of the Common Core state standards. It also is on all of our state tests, K through 12. And what a great way to teach persuasive letter writing is through reading a challenged book and then having students write a letter about forming an opinion and their thoughts about that book. And again, we could use really current picture books or novels too, and have students learn how to write a letter. And that would hit those common state core standards. And I hadn't thought of this before, but the other thing that we've got to be doing is we have to be proactively eliciting student voices way before there's a book challenge in our school or in our community. Because kids need to learn that they do have a voice. And we have to be giving these lots of different opportunities for students to learn how to speak out for themselves. Not just about challenged books, but learning to talk in partners and groups, surveys, and how to vote and how to debate, like doing that mock trial. We need to give them lots of discourse opportunities and have that free exchange of ideas, and so that they see what a real democracy is like. And so we have to be doing this so that they'll be prepared when a challenge comes, they'll be able to share their voice. We have to be doing this all year long, all the time as teachers, and they need to be literature circles, restorative circles, and Socratic circles, talking about lots of different things. And when they have lots of that practice, then they're going to be ready when there is a challenge in their community. This photograph is from Pennsylvania. I think it happened in 2021. Their school board banned like 182 books or something like that. And the students and families and community members came out in droves. And it was because the students showed up that that was overturned and all those books were returned. And it's much more powerful when students protest versus adults. And so that's why we've got to be doing all of these experiences where kids have lots of practice voicing their opinions about things and having discourse. So the other thing, as community members too, we need to be doing that too. Like I said earlier, every year we should be writing an op-ed or a letter to the editor for the Columbian about censored and challenging books. But we also need to be attending our school board meetings, our library board meetings, to share those alternate perspectives too. And I've attended a couple of Evergreen School District, that's the school district I live in, but I need to go back and do more. I loved it when they were on Zoom for a couple of years. It was easier to attend then. In person, it's a little harder. I attended a couple of times. Have you all seen this movie about this 100-year-old woman? Oh, you guys have to hear about her. Let's see, this will work. So at the 100-year-old, you can go to a school board meeting. I think we all could too. I mean, we've got to share our voice too as community members and adults. So I wanted to share that with you. Well, we have 5 minutes and we got to do band book club. We're gonna have time. Aren't those the coolest tattoos? I was like, I think I want that tattoo. So my hope was that you could choose either a picture book or a novel. I've got lots of other novels that are, you could read either the first chapter, and then, the S is missing. And then we could discuss those books too. But, you know, we've got 4 minutes and we could browse and look at books and we could still talk about the books. These were the discussion prompts I had. What do you all want to do? You want to look at books?
Bring yourself to. Why don't we just walk around and look at the different books in here? Let's be interested in knowing what books you all read, like as you were growing up. But I had the exact same experience as you with the book Forever.
Really?
Yes. I was in 8th grade though, but I was like, that was the first book I read, I'm like, I could see this happening. Probably like not so good, I could see some of it happening, but it was, I loved it.
Oh, I don't see it. The best one. Well, at least that here.
And this, I mean, you're overachiever. This is the fun. My students read.
This seems fun.
Our whole 5th grade class. Young I am, when the movie came out for Bridget.
Don't look at that sticker.
Class and then we're all supposed to go.
That, I can go on this page. And same with that page.
I love how
Yeah,
Harry
they say
Potter.
it was communism.
Oh my God.
So,
They recognize Jesus Christ as the Lord and Savior.
Yeah, but they're wishing.
James,
They're
trying to
witches,
be,
but-
but they.
I think I read more as an adult than I did as a child. I read
Oh, Borax.
because it was.
That's because I never.
Criminalized forest industry. I don't know what is that. That's what I always got it.
He's my awesome story because it did. And they.
I didn't enjoy reading
this for a moment. Meds. When I got into 4th grade, I didn't.
I used to go around calling people ponies. Cause that's what I feel like, we're just language, like argument against
And
everyone,
now.
get so much cooler, like offensive language when you read books.
Translate.
Call people blood brains.
It was taken, so.
I would see watch that.
So, you're listening, so. That's who we need to catch.
This is not.
So I grew up in a section of Brown. There you go.
Probably not very controversial.
Can you believe he was fired for that?
It's not that deep.
I grew up on Nancy Drew. Encyclopedia Brown lived much more like.
It was easy to solve, you could solve the mysteries and they have the answers in the back of the book.
I had that choose your own adventure line myself. Do you remember those?
Yes.
Choose your own
Uh-huh,
adventure.
I like those.
Well, that was like in fourth and fifth grade. I read that book in high school.
Yeah.
Have you read that?
And then up here, there are recent books about banning because it's occurring so much.
Man, this book.
So I'm gonna write a column for an online thing and I'm gonna write about, I read all 5 of these. But I also, there's a picture book coming out by Joe in the winter in August, I can't wait. There's an all ban, but
There was a Jewish. A picture book about Jews that's in the library and these people went around collecting Jewish books so that they can create a library. Of these books that. people can just read rid of. So, I know it makes sense, I really still. I have the true stories. Especially right now with what we're going through is the anti-Semitic. And like the Patriots owner. And commercials, I saw the first.
I did too. Or 2 nights ago, yes, the blue square. Yeah, I think that's a good one, I've never seen that till.
This was great, yeah. Thank you.
This year.